Welcome to World Travel Made Easy with Itinerary Boss, the podcast for busy professionals who want to plan unforgettable trips without the stress. If you're craving adventure, relaxation, or cultural immersion, but feel overwhelmed where to start, this is the show for you. Each week, we dive into travel tips, expert strategies, and actionable advice to help you save time, money, and hassle while helping you design your dream trip. From group getaways to romantic escapes to adventure packed journeys and budget friendly tips, we cover it all. I'm Ross, your host and travel enthusiast, with over a decade of experience balancing a demanding career while also planning trips to over 25 cities in Europe, all over the US, Central America, the Caribbean, and beyond. I've mastered the art of stress free planning, and I'm here to help you do the same. If you love what you hear, don't forget to follow the show, leave us a review, as well as share it with a fellow traveler. I want to make your next adventure the easiest and most memorable yet. Now, on with the show. Welcome back to another episode of World Travel Made Easy with Itinerary Boss. I'm excited to have Carolynn on the show today. She has a great background. She's been a flight attendant. She's also been a blogger and a travel agent. So she has, and much more. I don't want to sell her short and want her to give her own introduction, but she's going to bring a wealth of knowledge. And I'm really excited for this episode because there's going to be a lot of different perspectives. So get ready, strap in, and excited to have her on. Hey, Autumn, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm very excited for this interview. I know when we got the chance to connect for the first time, just you gave me some of your background, but don't, like I said, don't want to sell you short. So would love to hear a little bit more about, exactly what you do.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I've been really excited to be on your podcast. So, right now, what I do is I do travel photography and I basically take pictures around the world and then I sell them for canvases and large prints and metal prints, matted, all that good stuff to people around the world and within the Midwest.
Very cool. Yeah, and I know you're based out of Minneapolis, so I'm sure
Mhm.
yeah, so you're based out of there, and then you were a flight attendant and also just travel agent and photography, but love just to hear a little bit more about like how all of this got started because it's a cool
Sure.
story.
Thank you. It all got started when I was 15 and I was in my high school and I'm from the suburbs of Chicago and we had this idea for or not an idea but our school had electives that they could be able to take. And the elective that I took was film photography. My dad had this old Nikon camera in our basement, and I just started taking pictures for my course, and I fell in love with it ever since. So that was kind of like the catalyst for why photography became this important aspect in my life. But really, the travel aspect started when I studied abroad my senior year of college. I lived in England in Canterbury. And every weekend, I would fly to a new country and spend that time on Friday mornings. I would fly in and I'd sleep in the airport on Thursday nights on the floor. So the security guards got to know me really well, which is kind of funny. And then I would stay in that new country from Friday all the way till Monday, fly back Monday afternoon, right in time for my classes, which was Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I'm really lucky that I made it through and I graduated because I didn't think I'd make it because I was traveling so much.
That's pretty cool. I feel like anytime, I mean, just that a lot of the times that's where people get their start is studying abroad. And anytime I've been over in Europe, they're like, "Oh, you're here for 2 weeks." And I'm thinking, well, yeah, we got to maximize our time. But everyone's story is similar. It's whenever we'd stay in hostels, it would be that Thursday to maybe Monday. So that's pretty cool. And then from there, like, how did that then kind of catapult you into, okay, I really like this. Like, okay, now it's kind of going to become kind of full time.
It became when I moved back to Illinois, and I just was so, I remember feeling so devastated because I wanted to just go back to traveling all the time. I didn't want to stop. And so I started just putting my application into all these different places, and one of which was in the airline. And 10 days later, I got the call for an interview. I was flown down and went through a 6 hour interview with 8 different interviewees. And then I was granted acceptance into the flight attendant program. And I went through the program for 3 months. It was 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I had every flight attendant has to get a 90% on every Friday. We would have a quiz. And if you got anything less than a 90%, you were kicked out of the program. And it was really intense, like CPR, fighting fires in the cabin, doing water emergencies. I got to slide down the exit slide, the emergency slide, which was really fun.
That's okay. So see, these are things that behind the scenes, like people like me and most people who travel, right, don't know about. So that's
Yes.
very impressive. I have, respect for you and all other flight attendants. I think that's, you know, people need to, and I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
that you
Yeah.
sometimes don't get it when people are irritated and angry. But for me, I've traveled for a while, but I have a newfound respect when at 2018, my grandfather actually was flying. They were in the Grand Canyon. We had just seen him. We were out there in Sedona for my birthday. And him and my grandma there, he was around 81, 82, but they were hiking. They went up and he was just dehydrated. They went to
Mm-hmm.
the ER and I guess he was stubborn. He was just very competitive, like, and that's where our whole family gets it. But
Yep.
he he was just like, no, I'm good. I don't need to be admitted. We're good. And then the next day they flew from there to Colorado with our where my mom's brother lives, and he actually just passed out and passed away on the flight, and they had to do an emergency landing. So,
Oh, I'm
but
so sorry.
oh no, it's I mean it's fine, but I think the amazing things that the flight attendants did
Yeah.
for my grandma, how, right, like, and there's 300 people on the plane, so
Mm-hmm.
obviously they're trying to get somewhere, but just getting her there, understanding like this is traumatic for her, but then
Sure.
also flying with her to her next destination, making
Sure.
sure she was good, having cell phone numbers, just like those little things, and just continually
Mm-hmm.
following up with her. Like that's out of everything. Like that is kind of what stuck out. And she said like, hey, like that's what she kept talking about. So
Yeah.
that's when I
Mm-hmm.
really got a newfound, I mean, obviously traveling some, but like really focused on, right, you're there to help others. You're there
Yes.
to help get us there safely.
Mm-hmm.
Just because one passenger is being, sometimes
Yeah.
crazy, that's not your fault, right? And
Yeah.
you have to keep your cool, and right, and just so
Yeah.
it's definitely important to treat every flight attendant right. And I mean, just behind the scenes, like it's
For
not
sure.
just, hey, I just passed this test. It's no, you're going into a lot of these details. So yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to share that because I think it's important because
Yeah.
like you're going through everything that you have to get there.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I can't imagine like how hard that must have been to go through. And I totally agree with you. I think oftentimes when people think of flight attendants, they may think, oh, well, at least for me, like I'm blonde and, it's like, oh, she's just a flight attendant because she's, like she just wants to travel all the time. But really, when you are traveling and when you are becoming a flight attendant, your whole mind shifts because many people probably don't know this, but when people are coming onto the plane, flight attendants really, when they're saying hello to people coming on, they're actually supposed to be identifying ABPs, which is able-bodied persons. So on each flight, in case of an emergency, we have to have in our back pocket thinking of people who would be an able-bodied person to assist in case of an emergency. So when I'm saying hello and welcome aboard and going through that, I'm actually identifying people saying, oh, okay, if there's an emergency, that person in 28C would be really good. And then there's this other person. And then just because we have to have that in the back of our minds because you never know what could happen. It could be a bird strike, it could be something like that,
Hmm.
an engine failure. And you have to go into an emergency mindset within a blink of an eye and know your stuff because if you don't, you
Yeah.
know, people won't know what to do. They often look towards flight attendants for that awareness. So I think that's really important. So whenever I go onto flights now, I always bring like a little bag of individually wrapped candies, and I give them a handwritten card, and I say, you know, I was a previous flight attendant. So if you need anything at all, I can be a volunteer for an ABP. And I always let that be known on every flight, because I know in the back of their mind, that's what they're thinking of. And that probably relieves so much more stress, because it's like, okay, we got another person that can be able to assist.
That see, I just learned something brand new. I just thought they were nudging and they're like, hey, look at this guy,
Yeah.
both of them. So now I know when they're doing that, they're like, okay, this guy might be able to help us.
Yeah. Yeah. You've probably been on a lot of lists.
That's funny. But no,
Yeah.
okay, that's good to know. I mean, that's something too when you're going on, it gives them more peace of mind where,
Mhm.
hey, like now that I know that we travel a good amount, obviously, and it's like there's sometimes where I used to travel a lot more for work, just flying multiple times a week. And I remember I was on a flight. It was just from Charlotte or from Raleigh to Charlotte, so it was easy. But there was a delay, and then we got up, and one lady was sitting next to me, and we had bad turbulence, and
Oh,
she was
yeah.
like, "This is my first flight ever."
Oh,
Like
no.
so scared, and like I had to sit there and help calm her down. But it was like I was sitting there, I'm like, I feel like I'm on a roller coaster, and I was flying
Yeah.
so much at that point, I'm like, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. It definitely is. It can
Yeah.
be crazy sometimes.
Yeah, I'm glad that she was sitting next to you, because definitely when people go through that, I've had nervous flyers where it can be, no matter how old you are or how many places you've traveled, it can just be one really bad flight that can be super turbulent. And
Hmm.
then you're kind of, it depends on who you are, but some people can get really scarred for life because of it. And it can be terrifying. Thankfully, I haven't had any issues with super severe turbulence where I have to go to the hospital, but I
Hmm.
definitely know flight attendants who have been in the middle of the aisle through the service. They hit dead air without any warning, doesn't know, we don't know that it's about to happen. And then the trolley cart, everything, they just hit
Oh my.
the top of the plane.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
know some flight attendants who have had concussions too from it. I could talk about this topic
Yeah, no,
forever,
I
so
know. But
stop
but
me.
no, no, no. This is really great because I think it gives, right? I like the behind the scenes because it's
Mhm.
my goal is, I mean, my audience and the people who I help are people who travel some travel a lot, but they're always looking for tips and tricks, right? They
Sure,
want to understand what are some best practices, what are some
sure.
behind the scenes things. My goal, right, is everyone's super busy with work, and
Yes.
to not go have 100 Google tabs or go find what's on social media that's just going to get you there because that person's promoting it, right? My goal is to bring people tips where it's
Mm.
easy, digestible, and you have experts like yourself and others that bring different areas of expertise to the table that then I can share. So no, I love it, and I think that's really valuable because I'm not going to get that by going on a flight and then asking, spending a
Sure.
few minutes talking to a flight attendant, right?
Sure. Yeah. I one of the tips that I really like to give for people who are frequent flyers, especially if they are traveling different places, is to always save shower caps when you get them at hotels. Because if you take a shower cap and if you're having a change of shoes, you can take the dirty part of the shoe and wrap it in the shower cap. So that way it's protected. And a lot of flight attendants use that because we often carry two types of shoes, one that's onboarding and walking throughout airports when you're on quote unquote on display, and then the other when you are in flight walking in and out, which is a much more comfortable shoe, but is still in the uh, appliance is not the right word, but acceptable area where you won't
Hmm.
get dinged for it. So that's the shower cap one I really like. And then also, I always like to carry C bands with me just in case there is that turbulence, because believe it or not, C bands are really amazing. They have helped me so much with very bad turbulence, especially being a flight attendant. So I always keep a pack with me in my bag.
Very interesting. What are C bands?
Oh, sorry.
That's a stupid question, but I'm sure that there's
No, that's
and
okay.
if it's a girl thing, then that's just
Oh no. So what they are is they're basically bands that go on your wrists. They have a little ball. I honestly don't really know how it works. I think it's an or a pressure point. And so the ball will go right on the inside of your wrist. And you can get them at CVS or Walgreens or Target. And basically it just goes on the inside. You wear them on both hands. And it really kind of helps with any kind of seasickness or any kind of turbulence. If you're driving and you get car sick too, it's a really huge helper for that. So I always like to carry non-drowsy Dramamine and my C bands.
okay. Yeah, yeah, no. I think for people who get motion sickness, Dramamine's great. And then the shower cap is a good, I mean, I'm just thinking from a perspective of maybe someone has, just use an example because we have one of these coming up where we have a 6:30 or 8:30 flight and
Mm.
at night, but we have like we're going to be walking around during the day, right? And we're going to be in different types of shoes. So say you were like hiking, for example, and you had those in your carry-on and you had your airport shoes or whatever you wanted to wear on the airplane instead of bringing your dirty, muddy, maybe smelly shoes on, right? On the plane and sitting in those for a couple hours, you bring just a fresh pair of shoes and you can wrap those up in a shower cap. Okay. No, that's a good idea.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What other, I guess from a packing standpoint, like are there other tips and tricks that you have? Because I think when people who don't go to Europe don't realize they're like, oh, I have under X amount, but then you go get on like a Ryanair flight or something else, and it starts to dwindle, and then you're trying to figure out
Yes.
how to maneuver different things. In like prime example, when we were coming back from Greece this past September, I had a carry on that I should have just zipped up the extender and I would have been good. But I just was like,
Hmm.
we had to get through customs, get there, wasn't thinking how to take stuff out of my bag. And they made me check that. So, are there tips and tricks maybe that you've come across that, right, if you have a carry on to maximize room or any other packing tips?
Yes, I love this question. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. One of the tips that I love to have is I always have an airplane outfit. It is the most comfortable thing, it is easy, and it has a lot of pockets. So I normally have some type of joggers or a type of yoga pant situation. And then I often have a long sleeve shirt with a zip up vest. The zip up vest is the key to all of this because you can have multiple areas on this vest, an area to put your passport in, one for your headphones and for your phone, and then another for your wallet. And I have asthma, so I put my inhaler with all of my stuff. But that way, you're not having to dig through that carry on trying to figure out, okay, well, where's my ticket going to go? And it could just, it's just right on your body and you can just grab it and go and not have to fiddle with trying to dig something out. I often will use the same outfit every time that I'm traveling. So I'll divide up my time when I'm flying or when I'm going on a trip where I have designated days that are my airport day. And I have my outfit that I wear, and then everything goes according to that. In regards to packing when traveling abroad, it can be pretty tricky, but most common one is to roll your clothes. So that way it's the military style, the smaller area to fit more room for others. But this one's kind of a little quirky. I like to bring less clothes with me. And then when I get to the new place, as a quote unquote souvenir, I'll go through thrift stores or through something if like I need a lighter jacket or if I need a different type of pants. It's something that I can bring it home with me. Vice versa on that. Another thing that I've done is that if I have an outfit that I don't quite like, but it's a good outfit for travel, and I'm not going to miss it if I don't have it with me anymore. oftentimes when I've gone to hostels, they'll have a place where it's um, like take what you need, leave what you need. And
Hmm.
so what I'll do is I'll wash my clothes afterwards. And the ones that I'm not really like, I don't have an attachment to, and I'll wash them. I'll make sure that they're dried, and then I'll put that in the take it or leave it area. So that way, if people are looking for clothes, they can be able to grab what I don't really need anymore. But then also that frees up so much more space in my bag for the souvenirs or the things that you want to bring home with you. And it's just like a nice way to be able to keep on making that space.
Yeah, no, those are all really good points. I haven't heard the take it or leave it, and I haven't
Yeah.
heard I think going there and getting clothes from thrift stores, or because whenever we go travel, right, we're over the years moved from checked to now it's just carry on, no matter how long the trip, right? It's you're
Yes.
mapping out if it's a 16-day trip, right, you're mapping out, okay, I can rewear these outfits, right?
Yes.
I'm bringing clothes that are going to be uh, that are easily washable, that are easily foldable. But I think the challenge is right when you're going on your big vacation for the year, you're like, oh, I want to get something new that goes with the
Yeah.
vibe, right? If I'm going to Greece or if you're going here or there, right? So I think that's one of the challenges. But yeah, no, I agree. I think either rolling, we use packing cubes. I know there's a Soul Guard which has suitcase which has the built-in um racks kind of stuff,
Mm.
which and I've tried those. I don't like that as much. I think the packing cubes have been a game changer. The away suitcase is nice like that because it's a little bit more expensive, but it comes with a lifetime warranty, and you also can look and like search airlines, which is nice because if you want like the carry-on or the carry-on extended, I think that's key because then when you start to look at the Ryanairs are the ones who try to
Yes.
tell you that try to tax you on right every little thing, maybe a water
Yep.
bottle. They're
Yes.
that's really helpful. And I know a lot of some of the suitcase companies now are doing that because those are challenges that if you've never been to Europe or if you've never been elsewhere, you may not know about. So looking into those types of things when traveling abroad, it can be different than just traveling domestically in the States. So no, those are all really good tips and tricks. The thrift store is good because every time we go, I'm like, well, we can't really shop because we don't have any
Yeah.
room. So it's like now I'm thinking, do we do any shopping prior? Or do we just go there? Because you're gonna
Hmm.
wear, I mean, a lot of the times, right? You're gonna have one or two like nice outfits, then you're like day seven, you're like, I don't care. Right?
Yes, exactly. You're just so tired, and you're
Yeah.
like, if there's anything clean, I'll wear it.
Yeah. And over years, I think you learn to when you first start traveling, you want to overpack. Now it's like sandals, pair of walking shoes, pair of either white
Yes.
or black sneakers that goes with
Yes.
everything. And even me as a guy, now I realize like each time now I look harder at, okay, how many times am I going to wear that pair of shorts? Because if I think once, I get rid of it because it's like
Hmm.
every time it's always, I don't wear one pair of shorts or I don't like wear one shirt. And if you get rid of that, it gives you more room. And I've
Yes.
just found over time though, you learn those things. So that's the goal is to help people learn and not be like, oh, I need to bring double checked bags through cobblestone streets and in Europe and maybe lose one. We saw a lot of that. And it's like, nope, you can't do that.
Yep. Yep. Yes, I can totally relate to the cobblestone thing, especially with high heels. That is a whole other issue
Yeah.
that I have learned myself.
Yeah, but you
um,
learn.
yeah. The two things that I wanted to mention before I forgot was I also really love to bring detergent with me every time when I go because being able to wash underwear or socks in a sink and then be able to hang it so you have it fresh for the next day is really helpful and key for being able to have that room. And then the second thing was that if you have a type of larger, bulky item, to wear it onto the flight. So that way you can be able to fit more items into your carry on and then you don't get dinged for the 3 bags instead of the
Yeah.
2 bag rule.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Because yeah, when you're traveling to colder destinations in the winter, that's probably the biggest challenge is packing is for that. If you want to bring a carry-on. and yeah, wearing it and then being able to throw your jacket up top or just have it down low. I don't know if there's any other, because that's one challenge that we faced. I know you're from Minneapolis, so it's obviously way colder there. We're in Charlotte, it's not terrible, but when we have to like go to Ohio to visit my fiance's family, like packing, it's usually a check bag. Or my buddy who went to Greece with this past year, him and his wife went to Norway, and he's like, "There's no way I'm ever bringing a check bag." So I had to roll two down the snow streets, and but it's when you pack for
Yes.
those destinations. I don't know if there's any other tips or tricks that you have, or maybe different outside of carry-ons that you recommend that you've used or others use.
Yes, I actually have turned my photo bag, where I bring all my photography gear with me, into a makeshift also airport to go bag. So in there, I'll have an extra pair of underwear, I'll have an extra pair of socks, and my book, my journal, and then just items that, if in case I do get stuck somewhere, I can easily have it. So contacts, toothbrush and toothpaste, and medication too. So even though it's a small little bag, it still is something that if I need to sleep in my clothes that I'm wearing right now, I can at least have these things that are essential in that. But it's funny that you bring up that idea, because this, when in I talk about it in my book, but in one of the chapters it talks about Sweden, and I'm on a flight from Malmo, Sweden, trying to get back to England, and I bought this tea set that was this beautiful tea set that had a lot of items in it in Malmo, Sweden. However, I did not have the capacity in any of my bags, nor my friend's bag who came with me. So there was this group of men who were on tour, and they were like these burly, it was a metal band, and they had this long hair, and they helped me with my little dainty tea set, and they took the tea set and put it in their bags, so that was able to bring on my items. And then at the end of the flight, I went back and I was able to collect my tea set from this metal band. And that
That's
was
awesome.
Swedish. It was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you have many good stories from flying, just that are similar to that as an attendant, but also just on your own travel. That's pretty cool. What
Thank you.
about, so I know you talk about your book. When you were telling me about it, I think it's really cool. Just how you just, and that's why at the beginning I wanted to ask, like, how did this all come about? So yeah,
Sure.
would love to hear a little bit more about your book.
Sure, yeah. So my book is called Traveling in Wonder. And basically what it is it's my goal to go to 30 countries before I turned 30. It's divided into four series. So I have my study abroad series, my flight attendant series, the series when I become a travel agent, and then the series when I become a travel photographer. And throughout each chapter, it's not really a travel guide. So it doesn't say, oh, if you're in this city, you should go here. But it's more of it's more of reading through my experiences. So meeting the people that I meet, and the guys that I have crushes on, and, the people that I, um, but then also being able to get like that cultural view of the world too. I'm trying not to make it sound like that I'm like I'm trying not to sound narcissistic at all, because I'm just trying to describe the book. But so that's kind of what the book is about. In regards to each chapter, at the end of the chapter, I have my photography from the certain places. So I talk about the places that I am going through, the food that I eat, but then at the end, you actually see the photos at the end of each chapter. So it started when I was 22, it ends when I'm 30, and it took me 4 years to write, and it's finally finished.
Let's go. That's awesome. That's exciting. We'll make sure to link the book in the show notes for my audience. New
Thank you.
listeners here. If you follow Autumn, make sure to grab that. I think it's cool just to hear kind of the steps and how everything compounds. And I think that's what I try to get across to people is just get started somewhere. And like you said, the experiences, it's not, hey, when you go here, here's the guide. The more important piece is what did it help you do? And right, you were studying
Mhm.
abroad, sleeping on airport floors, getting to know, right, the people there. And then that transformed into being a flight attendant because you got home to
Yes.
Chicago and you're probably like, it's very cold. I want to go travel
Yes.
other
Yes.
places, which then led to travel agent, then to travel photography. So just seeing how that's really impacted is really cool. So that's why I wanted to make sure I highlighted the book because when we talked, I was very interested and it was definitely very cool.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I lose my train of thought on, because I know we're talking about flights and a lot of the biggest questions I get are, when's the best time to book flights? How do I do this, right? Is it Tuesdays? Is it this,
Yes.
right? And I'm like, well, don't do it unless you want like to really have high stress levels and wait till the
Yes.
last minute and find like a great, rewards deal. Maybe do that, but my suggestion is always doing it far in advance. But would love to hear just from a flight attendant's perspective, right?
Sure.
Anything around that as well as upgrades, right? Like how do you
Yes.
how my fiance now just got picked to get upgraded to first class like she
Oh,
does now. She
awesome.
travels a lot for work and I
Hmm.
used to, and now it's funny because I have a travel company and she's traveling for work and she's like, nope, I'll see you, have fun.
That's amazing. Yes, I got this question a lot when I was a travel agent because I would book flights for people often and using the travel. So basically, the way that it works is with travel agencies and travel agents, we get access to a system that's called GDS. The system is broken down where there's multiple different types of GDS systems that you can get acquainted with, but it's basically looking at flights on the back end that is the bare bones of the flight and how much it costs. When I was doing my travel agency, or not, I didn't own the travel agency, but when I worked for one at the brick and mortar one, people would come in and then I could be able to actually physically show them what it looked like, which was really nice and cool to be able to connect in that way. However, I personally learned that the Wednesday morning, Tuesday morning tip kind of works,
Yeah.
honestly. And it works normally right around the 53rd to 54 day in advance. So, or like within that 50 to 60-day area. So, if you are thinking about going on a trip and you want to book it for a certain time frame, I will sometimes wait until that time is correct for it to be that prime spot. Or one that I've been using more frequently lately is
Hmm.
kayak.com, actually, because kayak has a system where it's a kind of like a stoplight system of green, red, and yellow. And you can go through and look to see which dates are in green, which oftentimes I will book for a trip to leave on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, and then for you to arrive back in the destination. So for me, it's Minneapolis on that same batch of time, that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Hmm.
Because oftentimes flying on the weekends are the most expensive, and flying to or booking your trip too far in advance could be paying a lot more,
Yeah.
same as booking when you are so close to the deadline.
Hmm.
So that is one thing that I have thought about oftentimes. And the other important factor is booking in, which I'm sure you've heard all this before, but booking in shoulder seasons. So
Hmm.
in fall and spring. And honestly, like I would much rather be traveling in the
Same.
fall. Like
Same.
the pictures that I can get with my camera are just like amazing compared to when you are in the middle of summer and you're like so hot and it's melting and you're just like your camera's fogging up from all the dew. So yeah.
Well, yeah, and also all the people around you.
Yeah. And the humidity. Yeah.
Yeah. No, no, those are all really good points. That's pretty interesting. The 53rd and 54th date, Tuesdays and Wednesday mornings. Yeah, that's a lot of people talk about that, and that's something I always try to do. Also, have one of the Capital One cards that
Yes.
I use through that I track through the portal where you can put your flights in and it'll show you green, red, similar to yellow.
Hmm.
Also trying to figure out, and it just depends on, right? Are you paying with cash? Are you paying with points or miles? And there's people who help with, right? So you don't have to do all of that work that
Yes.
you can sign up for their weekly newsletter that shows like, hey, here's a great deal that we have, or here's a credit card that has this specific reward. Learn more about it. So that's for us. I've always booked far in advance, always watched them, and then done that. But I always try to fly out shoulder season 100%. We usually travel. September's my favorite time to go to Europe. That's the past 2 years we've gone there when we were with Portugal and Greece, which was that's the best time. You go like that mid to late because you still get the great weather. People are back in school. Prices are significantly lower, and you're getting to see everything and stay where you want versus where it's slam packed, expensive, super hot. We used to go to Europe in the summer with a group of guys, which was awesome. We were still in our 20s, so it was a fun time. But experience that now, have moved more into the shoulder season. But yeah, no, I agree. And we're going to Bali and Thailand in April, which is perfect shoulder season. So I couldn't agree more. And if you are using rewards, points, miles, right? Like the nice thing is there is you just need to have that type of flexibility. I think that's the biggest thing is people want to travel out on a Saturday and come back on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Like you're going to pay premium because everyone's trying to do it.
Yes.
If you can try to fly out, I always try to fly out on a Thursday, if
Hmm.
possible. I mean, if we have to do a weekday, great, but Thursday, that at least you're not missing too much work if you're working. So I found that works really well. But yeah, that flexibility coming home on a Monday or Tuesday, you're gonna save money. Or if you're doing rewards, points, and miles, you're gonna find some of that saver space, which is where you really can get some of those sweet deals. And if you're using the right type of credit cards, right, that get the best points for them, and you start to add transfer bonuses, things like that, like that's where the fun starts, and that's where a lot of people ask me, like, how do you guys travel for so cheap or do it
Hmm.
through like rewards or credit cards or points and miles? And just having that flexibility, also knowing what types of trips you want to go on, I think is the biggest part. And saying, where do we want to go, mapping that out, thinking ahead, planning your spending accordingly, understanding, right? We're planning a wedding to get married at the end of March. We opened up two specific credit cards in the past 3 months for two of the hotels. One, we're staying in Bangkok. We're doing our hotel block in Charlotte. One, we're staying at a bunch of Hyatts in Bali and Thailand. And we were like, we're going to get the points. We like staying there, right? It's Hyatt has the lowest point value, right? Like you can stay there for some places 10,000 points and a
Hmm.
certain credit card and bank transfers there, which it just makes it where then you're starting to think about like, I'm really not spending much money besides taxes and fees on
Yes.
travel. And I think a lot
Yes.
of people don't realize that because the flexibility is I want to travel on a Saturday to Saturday and I want to
Yeah.
book it 1 month in advance. And we're flying to uh, Bangkok and back from Bali and business on Qatar both ways
Wow.
because we planned it out 2 years ago where we were like, we're not
Yes.
using points and miles for Greece. We're going to save these. And when
Mhm.
Qatar comes out 361 days in advance and British Airways comes out 350 days, like that's marked on the calendar. And when those
Yes.
open up, we're transferring those points to those but it takes that type of planning and mapping that out. But you're saving, I mean, tens of thousands of dollars over time.
Exactly, exactly. And one of the points too that you were talking about as you were talking, um, I'm an American Express girly,
Yeah.
with my connections to the uh, airlines. So have been using Amex for a very long time. And one of the things that Amex offers, which I'm sure your Capital One offers too, is that it depends on certain aspects, but you have to turn on your credit card to get points
Hmm.
from places that you often order from. So one of them was Starbucks. So I would turn that on so I could get the same amount of points back onto my credit card for miles through Starbucks. And then the other one, which they just have canceled, but it is Lyft.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on how many using that transportation. So really, I took everything that I was normally using with Uber and I changed it all to Lyft when I got that, because I could be able to get that double points or that certain number amount of
Mm-hmm.
points. And I think it does change every month as well. So it could be more restaurants or groceries could be
Mm-hmm.
important on this month, and the next month it switches. And I feel like that has been a very important way to be able to gain those points too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great point. I'm glad you brought that up because yeah, Capital One, not so somewhat, but there's another one of the larger banks and credit cards who we can't mention on here
Sure.
because of compliance reasons, but
Yes, yes.
they have, you're able, if you have one of the cards, right? I get 10x points every time I book Lyft. So I only use Lyft, right? If you get
Yes.
right, you get Dash Pass, you get $5 per month, you get Dash Pass for free. You get
Mm-hmm.
there's other perks, right? I get 3 times the points on travel, and then right if you book through the portal, sometimes it's 5 times, 10 times. But then some of those also can transfer to places like Hyatt, where 1 to 1, which makes it and it just makes it fun where then you're able to then combine those together with maybe your Capital One with some of those other
Exactly.
places, and then that's how you get the flights. And then if you have a significant other and you start to do that and you start to do those and you start that one person has one hotel, one person has the other, and you focus on those, right? Like we have 6 free nights at IHG, which is like
Wow.
we're yeah, and that's just from opening that, focusing on where we're spending that, so
Sure.
then we're able to maximize the points there from meeting the spending threshold, and same thing for
Yes.
Hyatt. And then you're like, okay, I have 10 to 15 free nights this year,
Yeah.
and and we're continually. So I think it's just thinking about that, and thinking about what do you spend your money on a lot of the times is the biggest thing. Don't just go get this card because someone says it. It's like focus on what you spend. If you have a family of five and you spend a lot of
Hmm.
your money on groceries, American Express, you get
Yeah.
4x the points on that, and that's the
Hmm.
best thing to do. For me, most of my money spent on travel, so I have my favorite card and that. But yeah, I think it's understanding those type of things and backlinking them, like you said. I know American Express does that. I can't remember if there's another one, but yeah, Lyft connecting to that. I know there's Hilton. I know there's a couple others.
Hmm.
Built. I don't have Built, but that's another. But there's so many different ways to backlink and then just earn miles or points when you're just spending on your normal thing. So you're pretty much double dipping, which is another
Exactly.
strategy.
It's pretty amazing to think
Yeah.
about it. And it's nice to be able to talk with someone also that kind of gets it in a way,
Hmm.
because when you try to describe it to people, it can be really confusing. It
Yeah.
can definitely be confusing. So I think having that knowledge, and, if you're not sure exactly how to go about it, honestly, sometimes I've called Amex and I've just said, hey, can you just explain this to me in like a very easy term? Because I want to earn these points and I want to be able
Hmm.
to use them on travel, but I don't quite know exactly what way to go about it in the best way. And
Hmm.
some of the reps there will be able to help me with that. But yeah, that's a really good point. And I think using miles has been super helpful for my travel and just in general when traveling for work or things like that, because you're able
Hmm.
to then also use that tax purposes too. if it
Hmm.
if it goes along with my business, it becomes a
Hmm.
tax write-off. So making sure I save all those receipts and everything
Yeah.
like that as well,
Yeah.
um, due
Yeah.
to tax season coming up, because you
Yeah,
gotta, yeah,
exactly. I
you
have an
gotta do it.
episode. I have an episode with a wealth advisor who I interviewed who he gives some of those savings advice. So that's
Yes.
that's something people can tune into. But no, I agree. And like I mentioned, that's where when people are looking for that, because it can be confusing. I've been traveling for work for 10 years, right? And when I first started, it was, I got to stay at Marriott's, I got to stay at Hilton's, and I got to stay 75 nights at each to get 3 nights for free, which that was great because I got to go to Oktoberfest and I got to go to Berlin and places like that. But what I didn't realize is I could do the same thing from home and
Yes.
spend on travel or spend on normal day stuff and stay many more days. And I think that's the key, is just knowing what do you like to do? What do you spend your money on? Where do you want to go? I think is big, because when you're
For
opening a new
sure.
card, it's like understanding what airline flies there, what hotels might be there, because then
Mhm.
you're maximizing it and then you're getting your feet wet to then help just continue to, and once you do it once, it just becomes more and more, and you're like, wow, I can really travel almost for free besides like some
Yes.
taxes. But yeah, no, for people who are getting started out, one thing I want to call out is there's an app that we work with. It's called Travel Freely. And yeah, so I'll link it in the show notes, but it helps from an organizational for your credit cards. That's a common question that I get. So it helps you there. It helps you understand what your balances are, when those might expire. So
Hmm.
that's, dates for cards. So it's super helpful from an organizational standpoint. So definitely people check that out. And then if you want to join our weekly newsletter that comes out like that, those are the types of things that we share with our community. We want to make sure, right, you're getting those types of valuable information where you're not having to sift through 100 Google tabs or listen to
Yes.
100 different podcasts like my crazy self to learn all of this stuff by yourself and then learn lessons over many years. So that's where we really help and break that down for you and share. And we have affiliates with credit card companies, and that's where we help guide you on getting the right card. So just wanted to throw that out there because I think a lot of people, when they're, for newer listeners, I know my listeners know, but that's always helpful when they're looking for someone to help guide them there.
Perfect. Yeah, I definitely will check it out. I have not heard of it before, so I'm really excited to learn more about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have actually one of my upcoming guests introduced me to the founder just from, we were talking and she said, "Hey, you need to connect with him." And we got talking. He's like, "This would be perfect." So I'm excited because it's really helpful for
Sure.
people.
Sure. Definitely. Yeah, it's interesting when you are a flight attendant because you can know oftentimes at the end of the year, you have to get a certain amount of miles on your um, as your status, and then that will continue on to the next year. So we would know the people that would be just traveling for, they would be doing a turn just like us. They wouldn't even leave and they would get right back on in the same spot. And it was kind of like a tongue in cheek, funny thing that we were just like, I know what you are doing.
That's
And it's
funny.
a good way for them to be able to rack up those points. So that way they can keep their quote unquote status.
That is too funny. Well, I know we went down the points rabbit hole. I feel like anytime I get talking on it, it's with someone else who knows it, it can be fun, and that's what a lot of people ask about. So it's definitely, I'm glad we talked about that. You've been a lot of places. I always like to ask my guests, like, because selfishly I want to know too, but what are some of your favorite destinations and experiences of places you've been?
Sure. My favorite place that I've been, hands down, has been Norway. I have loved it so much. It's one of the places that I've been able to go back to multiple times, which I try not to go back to the same place multiple times, but just to always have a new experience and a new culture. However, there's just something about it that it calls me back like a boomerang. I just love it so much. I've been to Oslo, Bergen, and Tromsø, and each time I've learned so much more about the Nordic and Scandinavian culture, but also just in general, they have beautiful landscapes, and the fjords are absolutely mesmerizing. And every time I go, it's always in either the winter or in October, which is my favorite time to travel, especially with those colder winter months. It's just by far one of my favorite places.
That's cool. My best friend, his wife is actually we went to Greece with in September. She's Norwegian, so they go back there. So it's it's
Wow.
yeah, so they love it. They try to go back every other year. But yeah, she was telling me about it. Obviously the winter story I was telling you about with the checked bags and trying to go through
Yes.
snow. Lesson learned. But I guess during the summer said it's amazing. Like people take off and like it's a great time. So I've heard great
Yes.
things. I'm gonna have to tag along with them for that
Yeah,
and go. I've
definitely.
heard good things.
Definitely. And if you go up north to the Tromsø area, I was able to stay with the Sami people in a yurt, and I ate reindeer stew, and we slept on the reindeer skins. It was totally out of my elements, but you could see the northern lights, and we went reindeer sledding, and like I learned how to lasso a reindeer too, which was a whole other deal, but just really fun experiences that I would not be able to get in Minnesota.
Yeah, you have snow, but it's
Yeah, sometimes we have northern lights.
yeah. And then from the Northern Lights, like what's that like?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It was absolutely incredible. And luckily, last year was basically with the Northern Lights cycle. I think it's every 20 years they have a large upburst of the lights that are coming. So last year was the top of the 20-year mark. So this year too will be another year as well. So if you're thinking about going to Norway and want to see those northern lights, I would highly recommend booking it sooner rather than later, because the that Aurora Borealis is just going to kick it up in high gear. There are a few apps that I actually really like to use, one of which will call you in the middle of the night if there is a chance of northern lights where you are, and then it will tell you what the probability is. So some of them are Aurora Pro, Soft Serve News, also the space weather. That's the main thing. And there are Facebook groups too. The Facebook groups are like the key in your area if you're looking to see the northern lights, but you're not quite sure when it will be. Signing up for those so that way you get alerts from other people who are learning and wanting to do the same thing.
That's cool. That's definitely a good tip. I'm gonna have to ask them if they're familiar with that, since they've been, if they know. And if not, I can always go back and listen. From booking it, I don't know if that's gonna be possible this year with a honeymoon and a wedding and all that,
Sure.
but maybe once this episode's dropped and released, I'll forward it over to my fiance and tell her and send it to them too and see what they say. Try to rally the
Perfect.
troops with that. Cool. Well, one thing I like to always ask too is, impact. I think you've talked about it a little bit, but anything else just from maybe a specific moment or experience from a personal growth standpoint, besides sleeping on the airport floor when you're traveling abroad, that's made a big lasting impact on you from travel?
Honestly, it it's kind of weird, but for me, I have GAD, which is generalized anxiety disorder. So I run high strung on anxiety all the time. And one of the things that I talk about in my book and just on my channel in general is mental health and being an advocate for those who do have mental health experiences with that. And one of the things that I always like to highlight is that sometimes, oftentimes, when I'm struggling with anxiety, I will tend to look back on my younger self and think, oh man, I was so with it. I was a flight attendant. I could be able to go to all these places and I just want to be like that again. But I'm not younger like that now, and I don't know if I still have it in me. And just getting like that anxiety of how do I travel again? And how does this work? And, what happens if something goes wrong? I think a lot of those thoughts can crowd up in my experience in myself, but with talking amongst friends too, especially among people who do travel but may have taken a break from it for whatever reason, but they still want to get back into it. And one of the things that I talk about is if you are feeling that way, to start small. And it could be something where you are going to a brand new grocery store that you've never been to before, making your day-to-day life in small increments something where you are able to feel confident, starting with that unfamiliar grocery store, and then maybe the next week traveling to a new city that has been 20 minutes away from you, that you've always heard about, but you've never actually been a tourist in that city, and going there by yourself, and getting a podcast to listen to, something where you're able to experience, going into a grocery store there, or a coffee shop, and being able to build up that confidence. So when you are looking to travel to a new country or a new city or a new state, you will be able to have your butt in that
Yeah.
airplane seat, or, on the train, or however you're going to be in transportation wise, and just be able to feel like, what, I'm a little nervous. I haven't done this in a while, or maybe I haven't done this ever. I've never
Mhm.
traveled to a new country before ever, and I'm nervous about it. But what did I do all those other times when I was nervous beforehand, and I was going through like, okay, how am I going to get to this new city using public transportation? Even though it's only 20 minutes away, it's still something that you're having to use those tools. So that way you feel that confidence in you. And when you arrive to that new country or that new state by yourself, you think, I got this. I can figure it out because I've done it before, and I can do it again. And I've got tools to be able to use.
That's awesome. And that's, I mean, no, that's a great answer. I think one thing is just building up. It's always right. The new year, people want to build up new habits.
Yes.
It's not going and trying to do what I did, right? And do
Yeah.
2 years of credit card points to then book. No, it's literally building up small habits. And sometimes it takes 8 weeks to, right, get a habit in place. And
Mm-hmm.
right, I just use going to the gym as, because now I try to go every day, but there were times where I didn't, and I would go 5 times a week. But some people are like, oh, I can't get into it. I haven't been. And it's like, once you get out of it, it's harder to get back into it. So I think that's
Yes.
one thing. I mean, you said it very
Yes.
well. It's like you did it so many years, you learned, right? But a lot of your experiences, and I can say it from personal experiences, you
Mm-hmm.
learn so much about yourself. You have so many of those moments that are, you're like you said, when you were in Norway, you
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have done that ever if you were in Minnesota or if I was in Charlotte, right? There's no
Yes.
reindeer in Charlotte. But learning that type of stuff helps you then build up. It's just like compounding, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
you learn this, you take that from there. And that's why I loved your story when you talked about going to 30 countries before you were 30, right? And how just kind of the transformation of what all of that did. So I think it's really starting small. And that's really the
Yeah.
goal with this podcast, with why I started this was I
Mm-hmm.
was doing all of that, and everyone always had the same type of questions. What do I do here? What do I do there? I'm afraid of this. How do I do this? And for me, I was like, I know all this stuff. I just need to figure out how to organize it and help better serve people by bringing on experts like yourself. You mentioned public transportation. That's a huge question. When you go over, I think back to for the first time I went, not studying abroad with Ireland with a guide, but in Spain, like, I'm like, I don't know. I took 2 years of Spanish in high school. Like, I don't remember anything. Like, what? So, but those are common questions that people
Sure.
have, and there's experts out there, right? And that's the goal,
Yeah.
is for me, is to compile all of those experts and
Yeah.
bring those so people can say, oh, I have this question. Let me go listen to Ross's podcast, or let me read his newsletter. Let
Mm.
me go to his website, because he may have things that are going to help me with those type of those to overcome those. And that's the goal,
For
is because
sure.
everyone, it's not like I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to get over to Thailand and I'm going to know exactly what to do. No, I'm going in like, okay, well, once we land, I've never been, so I'm in the same boat. But doing it for a while, that's helped build up, right, some of those things. And but it's starting small. You have to take that trip, maybe like you said, to a grocery store that you've never been to. Try it
Mhm.
out. Go to the Trader Joe's during the middle of the day when it's packed. No, I'm joking. Don't do that. That'll make you way more stressed out. But no, but it's starting and doing little things, and just building those up. So no, very
Yes.
very well said, and that's definitely it's helpful to hear it from you too, who was a flight attendant. It isn't people think that everyone travels everywhere and they know everything when they get there. No, they don't. They just sometimes it's those habits that have built up and they're like, I'm going to take a leap of faith and figure
Yeah.
it out. If something goes wrong, we'll kind of figure it out on the fly.
Exactly. And then when you're in those moments of panic, when you are in the new country and you're like, oh gosh, like I should be better at this. And, I've done this before and why can't I pack accordingly, speaking from experience lately. But just in those moments being like, you know what, there's like grace for me to be able to feel okay in this and just know like, yeah, you know what, you're rusty, but that's what learning is all about. It's being able to gain these little nuggets of knowledge so you can be able to further better yourself and help others who are wanting to maybe go and experience something new themselves.
Yeah. No, well said. Well, I want to end on that. I don't know if you said it perfectly, which
Thank you.
helped me answer, but yeah, I don't know if I have any other questions that'll help prompt a better answer or any more value I can bring.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. I know you mentioned your book, but is there anywhere else listeners can find you if they want to get started or just follow your story?
Yes, yes. Thank you for asking. So I have my photography on my website and my book on my website for sale. It's autumncarolyn.com and it's Carolyn with two N's. I also do a travel blog there as well. So I talk about different places that I've been and recommendations that I have for those places. And then I'm also on social media. So I have my Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all that fun stuff. And that is also Autumn Carolyn Photography. And the Carolyn is with two N's. And then I have a newsletter every month that I do one newsletter. It's always about a different country. So I include a recipe, tips and tricks, fun facts about that country, and then a word of the month as well. And a portion of proceeds that I sell from my photography always goes towards a different charity every month. So this month's charity is going to go towards the wildfires that are happening in
Oh, that's
California
awesome.
right now. Um, and yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have. My book is available online on like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, all those places. But if you buy it directly from my website, that helps me out way more than
Yeah.
buying it from one of those other retailers. And yeah, just thank you so much for having me on the show. And thank you for your time. And it was really lovely to meet you. I also love that you have a Jordan jersey in the back. So that's
I
great.
that's a for another that I could tell that story, but a lot of friends definitely know it. But yeah, it's big basketball guy and got it one
Nice.
one day when we were in New York City after a long day of brunching. So it was yeah, it was definitely a good purchase and something that I had to throw up on the back wall. But no, I appreciate you coming on. For our normal listeners, we'll share her links in the show notes for her website, book, social media. For new listeners, same. And for our newer listeners and for our other listeners, make sure you give us a follow. That way, you're not missing any upcoming episodes. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That way, you're getting and you're not missing any of the episodes. And if you want to give us a 5-star review, if you think this is worthy, give us one because that helps us grow the show. It helps us reach more people, and it ultimately helps us help more people travel. And right, that's the goal, like you heard on the show. So really appreciate it, Autumn. Thanks so much for coming on, and we'll talk soon. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks.